At exactly 3:47 a.m., three aging Russian-built submarines slipped beneath the surface of the Persian Gulf. Navigation lights off, radios silent. Diesel engines faded as electric motors took over, leaving only the faint hum of battery-powered propulsion. Three Iranian Kilo-class submarines vanished into the complicated waters of the Strait of Hormuz, moving slowly as they attempted to position themselves against the USS Abraham Lincoln. A nuclear-powered aircraft carrier displacing nearly 100,000 tons was sailing through what Tehran considered its own backyard. To Iranian naval planners, this looked like an opportunity. To the surveillance systems already watching from hundreds of miles away, it looked very different. The Iranians called the boats Tareg, Noor, and Yunus. NATO classified them simply as Kilo-class submarines. Among U.S. Navy crews, they carried a nickname earned during the Cold War: Black Holes. When operating on battery power at just a few knots, these submarines can become extremely quiet. Their anechoic hull tiles help absorb sonar signals. With diesel engines shut down, heat signatures disappear. For limited periods, they can move through the water with almost no detectable noise while carrying up to 18 torpedoes. Iran had prepared for this scenario for months. Their planners believed the geography of the Gulf and the element of surprise would give them an advantage. What they didn't realize was that their movements had been noticed before the submarines even cleared the harbor. The Persian Gulf is relatively shallow, an average depth of around 160 feet. Thermal layers, heavy shipping traffic, and strong currents can distort sonar signals. For diesel-electric submarines, these conditions can create useful cover. But the Gulf has also been studied and monitored for decades. Its sound patterns, currents, and thermal layers have been mapped in extraordinary detail. In other words, the environment that seemed like concealment had already been carefully analyzed. At 3:21 a.m., the first indication appeared more than 200 miles away. A U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon patrol aircraft circling high over the Gulf of Oman used its AN/APY-10 radar to scan the waters below. The radar provides extremely detailed surface tracking. Three vessels departing Bandar Abbas Naval Base caught the operator's attention. Their spacing and movement pattern matched a standard submarine deployment profile. The course heading pointed directly toward the expected route of the USS Abraham Lincoln. Within 45 seconds, the information moved through encrypted Link 16 data connections to every platform in the carrier strike group. From the Iranian perspective, the submarines had just begun their hunt. From the American perspective, the encounter had already begun. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, dim displays showed the emerging track picture. Iranian naval harassment in the region wasn't unusual. Small boats or patrol aircraft appeared regularly. Submarines, however, represented a far more serious threat. The tactical action officers studied the data. Three subsurface contacts roughly 58 nautical miles from the carrier group, moving at moderate speed. Estimated time before they could reach effective weapon range, about 4 hours. That was more than enough time to activate a full anti-submarine warfare response. Modern carrier strike groups carry extensive sensor networks specifically designed for situations like this. P-8A aircraft deploy large fields of sonobuoys. Destroyers tow long passive listening arrays thousands of feet behind their hulls. Helicopters can lower sonar sensors directly into the water. And somewhere nearby, an American attack submarine quietly listens for anything unusual. At 4:18 a.m., the first Iranian submarine crossed into a field of deployed sonobuoys. The boat, identified as Tareg, was operating at roughly 150 feet depth. Passive acoustic sensors quickly detected faint machinery sounds. Frequency analysis picked up pump activity. Narrowband tracking isolated the propeller pattern. 6 blades. The rotation profile matched a Kilo-class submarine moving slowly on battery power. Within about 90 seconds, analysts had a reliable bearing, estimated range, and depth. That information instantly updated the tactical displays across the strike group. The carrier knew. The escort ships knew. Other listening platforms knew. The crew aboard Tarek had no idea they had just been detected. 12 minutes later, the second submarine, Noor, entered the same detection field. It produced a nearly identical acoustic pattern, similar depth, similar speed. Now 2 contacts were being tracked with growing accuracy. The third submarine, Yunus, had not yet appeared on sensors. It might have been taking a different approach route or holding farther back. Anti-submarine warfare planners assumed it was still present and assigned assets accordingly. You search for what you can confirm while preparing for what might still be hidden. The destroyers USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. and USS Spruance extended their towed sonar arrays, long cables trailing thousands of feet behind each ship. These arrays listen passively for distant sounds without interference from the ship's own propulsion. They quickly detected both submarines. Tarek at roughly 22 miles, Noor at about 19. Both were slowly converging toward the carrier's projected path. From a tactical perspective, it resembled a classic pincer movement, the type often studied in Cold War submarine exercises. The difference here was that one side already had detailed tracking. Meanwhile, the carrier itself activated its hull-mounted sonar system. Low-frequency active sonar pulses traveled through the water and reflected off solid objects below the surface. Clear returns appeared on the displays. Now the submarines were being monitored by multiple independent systems. Sonobuoys in the water, towed arrays behind destroyers, and active sonar pulses from the carrier group. For the Iranian captains, the situation presented a difficult choice. Continue approaching and risk discovery. Turn away and abandon the mission, or launch torpedoes from maximum range and hope for favorable conditions. Their torpedoes could reach roughly 11 miles under ideal circumstances. At that moment, they were still 19 and 22 miles away. Closing the distance would take roughly another hour and a half at their current speed. 90 minutes passed with the submarines closing in on a target that already knew where they were. At 5:47 a.m., the real decision point arrived. Not for the Iranian crews, for the Americans. A U.S. Virginia-class submarine had been quietly trailing the Iranian boat Tarek for nearly 40 minutes. It moved silently at around 400 feet below the surface, its BQQ-10 sonar system tracking the target with extraordinary precision. The system could isolate mechanical sounds from pumps, valves, and propeller rotation, building a remarkably detailed acoustic picture of the submarine ahead. Weapon solutions were already calculated. 2 Mark 48 AD cap torpedoes sat ready in the forward tubes. One command could have ended the encounter within minutes. But destroying the submarines wasn't necessarily the objective. Sinking them would escalate the situation instantly. Forcing them to abandon the mission would send a message just as clearly, without triggering a larger confrontation. The order came from the carrier group, active sonar prosecution. Let them know they were being followed. The destroyer USS Spruance increased its active sonar transmissions, sending powerful acoustic pulses through the water roughly every 30 seconds. Each ping echoed across the shallow gulf and struck the Iranian submarines with unmistakable clarity. Inside Tarek, the crew didn't just hear it. They felt it vibrating through the hull. The sound reverberated through the compartments like distant thunder. In that moment, the captain understood. They had been found, and they had likely been tracked for some time. Meanwhile, the American submarine continued its silent shadowing. The Virginia-class platform carries one of the most advanced sonar suites in service. Its spherical bow array, side-mounted sensors, and long-towed array combine to produce a full acoustic picture of the surrounding ocean. When operating quietly, the submarine is extremely difficult to detect. Often quieter than many diesel-electric boats moving slowly on battery power. At 6:02 a.m., the Iranian captain made a final decision. Fire. 2 Test 71 torpedoes launched from Tarek's forward tubes. They were wire-guided weapons capable of speeds around 23 knots and designed to travel several miles toward a target while receiving course updates from the launching submarine. But torpedo launches are difficult to hide. The compressed air discharged from the tubes created a distinct acoustic spike, like a sharp crack echoing through the water. Every sensor in the carrier strike group detected it instantly. Within seconds, the launch point had been identified. The American response came immediately. The destroyer USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. launched 2 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes, not toward the submarine, but toward the incoming Iranian weapons. This created a rare underwater engagement, torpedo against torpedo. The Mark 54 interceptors accelerated rapidly, reaching roughly 45 knots as their active sonar seekers locked onto the slower Test 71 torpedoes several thousand yards away. Within minutes, both Iranian torpedoes were intercepted and destroyed roughly 11 miles from the carrier. The explosions echoed across sonar displays throughout the strike group. Moments later, the second submarine, Noor, attempted the same attack. 2 more torpedoes launched. The result was identical: interception, detonation, no damage to the carrier group. By 6:18 a.m., both Iranian submarines had expended their initial torpedo salvo. 4 weapons fired, 4 destroyed before reaching their targets. The American ships remained untouched. At that point, the Iranian boats faced an uncomfortable reality. Reloading torpedo tubes would take time they didn't have. Continuing the approach meant remaining under constant tracking. The American submarine trailing Tarik made the situation unmistakably clear. From roughly 2,000 yards behind the Iranian vessel, it transmitted a powerful active sonar ping. The acoustic shockwave rolled through the water and struck the hull of Tarik directly. Equipment inside the submarine rattled as the sound reverberated through the pressure hull. It was not an attack. It was a message. We know exactly where you are. We have been following you. You are still afloat because we have chosen not to fire. Surface. Within about a minute, Tarik initiated an emergency blow. High-pressure air forced water from its ballast tanks, and the submarine began rising rapidly toward the surface, leaving a trail of bubbles behind it. 8 minutes after Tarik surfaced, the second submarine, Nor, followed. Both boats rose to the surface roughly 14 miles from the USS Abraham Lincoln. Their hatches opened slowly. Crews climbed onto weathered decks, scanning the horizon. They saw nothing. No destroyers. No aircraft circling above. No sign of the forces that had tracked them for hours. Just open water stretching in every direction. And the quiet realization that they had been outplayed by opponents they never detected, never heard, and never even saw. The third submarine, Eunice, never appeared. It may have aborted the mission before entering the strait, or remained farther back as a reserve. Analysts would spend weeks studying sonar recordings and patrol data trying to determine where it went. For Tehran, that hidden boat was the only small positive in an otherwise failed operation. At 6:51 a.m., the USS Abraham Lincoln continued exactly as planned. The carrier didn't change course. It didn't slow down. Its navigation track through the Strait of Hormuz remained steady, as though the attempted submarine attack had barely interrupted the morning routine. That calm response carried its own message. The cost comparison told the rest of the story. Iran had fired 4 Test-71 heavyweight torpedoes, each estimated around $1.1 million, roughly $4.4 million in weapons. Operating 3 submarines for the mission added another estimated $890,000 in fuel, logistics, and maintenance. More significant than the financial cost was the intelligence exposure. Acoustic signatures, operating procedures, and coordination patterns had all been recorded by the opposing side. Total Iranian expenditure, roughly $5.3 million with no tactical result. On the American side, the response was far smaller. 4 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes used to intercept the incoming weapons cost about $1.8 million combined. Around 40 sonobuoys deployed during tracking operations added approximately $112,000. Total additional cost, roughly $1.9 million. The outcome was decisive. The carrier strike group remained protected, the torpedoes never reached their targets, and analysts gained valuable acoustic data on Iranian Kilo-class submarines. Perhaps the most important takeaway was the demonstration of layered anti-submarine defense working exactly as intended. Aircraft, ships, sensors, and submarines sharing data in real time to track and counter underwater threats. Later that morning, the Strait of Hormuz returned to normal activity. Oil tankers continued their transit. Fishing boats moved along their usual routes. The USS Abraham Lincoln passed through the strait and continued south toward the Arabian Sea without breaking stride. Somewhere beneath the layers of warm Gulf water, a Virginia-class submarine resumed its quiet patrol. It never revealed its position, never fired a weapon, and left behind only one unsettling realization for those it had tracked. They had been followed the entire time by something they could not hear, could not see, and could not escape. If you found this breakdown interesting, consider subscribing and sharing the video. Your support helps bring more detailed stories about modern military operations and the technology behind them.